All right. Well, let's get started. It's 11:01. I want every second I can get with you, my man. Your track record and highly recommended experiential life. I can't wait to hear about. And so here we go. Joe Fairless is the co-founder of Ashcroft Capital, which has over 2.5 billion in assets under management. In addition to responsibilities at Ashcroft, you've created a podcast, the best real estate investing advice show ever which is the longest running daily real estate podcast in the world and generates over 500,000 monthly downloads. That's pretty impressive. He's also a proud member of the Texas Tech Alumni Advisor Board for the College of Media and Communications, as well as being recognized as Outstanding Alumni at Texas Tech University, where he's a former Adjunct Professor. How cool is that? Also currently Junior Achievement Board member and volunteer for the Cincinnati chapter and has been recognized by the Junior Achievements Free Enterprise Society. You volunteer at Crossroads Hospice and has been recognized as Multifamily Investor of the Year by Think Realty magazine. You and your wife created Best Ever Causes, which has proudly supported 40 different nonprofits in the last 40 months. And this is probably even outdated and it may be more expansive than that. So welcome to Empire Builders.
Well, thanks. And yep, you got the right guy. That's all accurate information.
That's good to know. So just a quick preface, Empire Builders, I created this back when COVID hit and, the whole pandemic thing. And I thought, man, I need to bring positive energy when everything is uncertain. I think the greatest asset you have is calming voices from people that have credible experiences and can speak to how to not just survive, but thrive. And so it's gone through a few iterations, but I've had some amazing people agree to have conversations with me. And part of the lesson that I've experienced and learned and that I want our folks to hear is that your network is your net worth and that it's not always about the money. It's about relationships, energy, and information and support for one another. And so what I strive to do is not only just extract some content around business and making money and creating a wealthy life, but the wealthy life piece is a holistic perspective, in my opinion. I'm sure you've known people who have lots of money and are miserable, and there's no point in that. So along the way, I'd love to touch on some things that you find that create life balance and perspective that, at some point, money's just good for the good that it does. And once you have enough, it becomes a tool and an opportunity. And love to get more on how you're exercising a holistic approach to success, if that's acceptable conversation.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned, your network equals your net worth. I agree with that, and I think that's an interesting topic to dig into a little bit, because in order to have a network that you're proud of, that you like hanging out with, that challenges you, before you can have that type of network, everyone, we have to work on ourselves, and we have to be proud of who we are and what we're bringing to the table and the development track that we're on. Because if we are not performing optimally on the various aspects of our life, then it's going to be hard to attract those who are and bring them into our network. And so I'm a huge student of personal development. I have been since I've been an entrepreneur, a little bit before I was an entrepreneur. And that has helped me attract the right network to then effectively increase the net worth.
Awesome point. And, they say you're the average of the 3 to 5 people you spend the most time with. And certainly we're the product of our environments. And I think, coattailing what you said, if your DNA doesn't speak to contribution and adding value, and you don't build yourself up to the extent that you create value, the relationships, there's a lack of equity in it and a lack of reciprocity. And so that's an awesome point and a great starting place. So I did a little research, by the way. I say research. I Googled, and
that's research.
Google knows everything. But 5 years ago, you were on a podcast for someone else, and you were at 130 million in assets. Mm-hmm. And then 4 years ago, there was one we were 301 million I love that you're like, hey, thanks for including the one. That one counted. And then today, I mean, if I read this right, it's 2.5 billion. Clearly, you figured out a scalable strategy. And I think maybe an effective way to start our conversation is let's start with today, kind of start with the end in mind and where you are. And then, is thumbnail quick, like what does your organization, your strategy, like what does your day in the life look like today? And what does the organization look like? And then let's back up the train and kind of go, okay, what was the first day like in your adult working career after, a childhood of experiences?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll follow up and I'll close the loop on something that we were talking about initially, where personal development is a major focus in order to attract the right network. I will say that I have so much respect for everyone who's participating in this conversation virtually, because you're investing your time to develop yourself and to find one or two things that perhaps this conversation will yield, and that will help you and will help others and create a positive ripple effect. So I really respect everyone on this call who is investing your time into this conversation. So those were a lot of questions, Rick. Which one would you like me to answer?
The simple, what does today look like organizationally, like to operate an organization at the level that you have and the acquisition? Like, how many units does 2.5 billion represent roughly, or how many doors, or how do you?
Yeah.
What does your portfolio look like? Maybe that's an easy question.
Yeah, roughly 12,000 units. We just bought our largest. We just did our largest transaction ever this past June, and that was a purchase price of approximately $450 million. And we're doing another. We have a closing in a couple weeks that is approximately $150 million purchase price. So we are growing leaps and bounds. But that's not the focus. The focus is on performance, because I know that as long as we're performing, as long as we're doing what we say we're going to do with our investors, with our residents, then the growth is going to take care of itself. With the brokers that we work with the team on site, if they know we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and then a little bit extra most of the time, in a positive way, then we're going to build our relationships with those individuals, and we're going to do very well. We'll get repeat investors, we'll get residents who want to stay longer, who appreciate a higher quality living experience when we do the renovations. Property management team members stay on longer, brokers share more deals with us. And that's our approach. What's the team structure look like? I am responsible for 3 departments. So I'm the co-founder of Ashcroft Capital, and my business partner is the other founder. So there's 2 of us, and we divide and conquer, and it has worked out very well. We divide and conquer based on our strengths, and we don't focus, for the most part, on the areas that we don't have a lot of expertise in. So high level for our business, there are 3 main components to any. So my business is I raise money from accredited investors. We buy apartment communities. We improve the communities through interior renovations, some exterior renovations, and then we raise the rent, we sell, and ideally we make money. That's my business model. And we have properties in Dallas, Fort Worth, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and Atlanta. And so clearly we like the South and Southeast. The departments, so the three areas, high level for any syndication business, is you've got to have the money to buy the deals, you've got to have the deals to buy, and then you've got to be able to execute the business plan. High level, those are the 3 components of the business. And so my focus is on one of the three components. My focus is on the money part. My business partner, Frank, his focus is on finding the deals and then executing. And my focus is on the investor engagement, the relationships with investors, and the communication with investors. Now there's some overlap where he and I work on various aspects of the business, but by and large, we stay in our lane. And so the three departments that I oversee, one is the marketing department, two is the investor relations department, and three is the investor services department. The marketing department's responsible for attracting new investors into Ashcroft Capital. The investor relations department is responsible for building the relationships with those investors. And then the investor services department is responsible for helping those investors along the way through the logistical aspects of investing with us.
Cool. Awesome high-level overview and great foundation for today. Let's back up and maybe give us a little background. And, I feel like until they understand the person they're dealing with, sometimes the mechanics of execution or the current state it doesn't resonate at the same level. And so getting to know you a little better, can you give us a little thumbnail of what it was like growing up in your world?
Sure. Growing up in my world, I was born in Michigan. In Flint, Michigan, and then my family moved when I was 3, whenever the automotive industry tanked, and we moved to Texas. And I grew up in Texas. I still have family in Michigan. My grandma is actually 107 years old, still living in Flint, Michigan. She's sharp as a tack and doing well, relatively speaking, for being 107. I'm grateful that I'm still able to enjoy time with her and my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter and a wife. I'm grateful that my 3-year-old daughter especially is able to enjoy some time with her. We moved to Texas when I was 3, grew up in Texas, went to school at Texas Tech, and then graduated from Texas Tech and moved to New York City right after graduation. Growing up, in Texas, played football. It was not out of my system after high school, and I attempted to play college football. I went to Blinn Junior College for a semester and tried to walk on for this junior college. I was not successful, did not make the cut. My flag football team that semester, though, we won the championship on campus, but it is a junior college, and there wasn't a whole lot of competition.
Success is relative, right?
Exactly. So then I was like, all right, well, I didn't make the team for Blinn Junior College. So I still want to play football. So I went to Mary Hardin Baylor. It's a Division III school, and they would accept anyone at the time. And so I played there. And it was a D3 school, and I was on the JV team of the D3 school, and I realized, okay, I have a different calling in life. This is not the right fit for me. So I endured the 6 a.m. spring practices throughout that spring semester at Mary Hardin Baylor, and then in the fall I played on the JV team, and then I was like, all right, I need to go somewhere. So I went to Texas Tech, and I really enjoyed my time at Texas Tech, perhaps too much, but it was very enjoyable time. And then I switched majors a couple times. I wanted to be a news anchor. And then I decided, no, I don't want to do that, because I shadowed a reporter during a spring break, and I just didn't enjoy how they were all up in people's business at times that the people didn't want them to be. And that's not always, but from my week-long experience with the reporter, that seemed to be the case. And I didn't want to be intruding on people's lives like that. And so then I wanted to be a pediatrician, because I was working at a daycare in college, and I enjoyed that. until I took intro to chemistry and made a D. And then I said, well, nope, it's intro to chemistry and I'm making a D. So that was off the table. So then I was like, all right, I had some credits and I was like, well, what's the path of least resistance to get to the finish line? Advertising. And it just happened to really fall into my wheelhouse where it was natural for me. It made sense. And so I was advertising major, graduated, went straight to New York City, worked on Madison Avenue right out of college because I wanted to compete with the best of the best in advertising. So I went to New York City, and yeah, I started making $30,000 as a junior project manager at TBWA Chiat Day right out of college in New York.
Very cool. I heard a few things in there that were interesting. One, our paths aren't completely dissimilar in that I wanted to make it in music, and then I did that for 9 years, grew my hair long, and at 30 kind of woke up on the other side going, I'm just not that good. Like, I'm not bad, but I'm not that good. I had a professor tell me I should be a journalist, and did a little poking around and realized journalists really don't make any money. And I'm like, man, one day I think I want to own a Porsche, and that's never going to happen. I probably didn't talk to the right writers, though, in that sector. But what I heard you say is, one, you failed forward, you experienced, you recognized deficiencies, and then you course corrected and competed with the best. That's really a cool concept. What advantage do you think you had in going to New York and immersing yourself in the middle of, like you said, the best?
It is a big, it's a big part of how I've gotten to this point, because it's not necessarily about the plans that we have for ourselves in 5 years. It's, while that's important, it's more about going where the best of the best are now and putting ourselves into that competitive environment, whether it's sports or whether it's, in business, and then seeing where that takes you. Because I was talking to someone yesterday and they said, did you ever think you'd be at this point, with assets under management and where you're at? I was like, no, absolutely not. I couldn't have thought that I'd be at this point. So yes, competing with the best of the best was something that I wanted to do right out of the gate. And Texas Tech has, I don't know how many enrolled students, but I can tell you there are probably 5 of the graduating seniors that went to New York City, if that, out of school. And that's pretty common, where it's not just Texas Tech, it's most schools. You go to the big city within your state, or you go back home after you graduate. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I wanted to, especially if the best of the best are where you're going back to, but I wanted to go compete with the best of the best in New York City. And so, that's what I did, and ended up being very beneficial, because I wanted to go back to Texas after 5 years. And my thought process was, hey, I'm going to go to New York City. My resume is going to look phenomenal relative to other people who stayed in Texas, and I'm going to jump ahead of them when I go back to Texas after 5 years. Well, I ended up staying in New York for 10 years. And then I went to Cincinnati, where my now wife is, because she's from Cincinnati. So that's where we live. But that wasn't part of the 5-year plan. But because I threw myself into that type of competitive environment, I let the momentum take me where I thought I should go, which was staying in New York for, ended up being a decade.
Right. And then you've got experiences with people that are, fast tracking differently, and your perspective changes and your, knowledge base changes. What took you to Cincinnati? And by the way, I just want to acknowledge Bob Castellini for our relationship, and another example where good people know good people. And so thank you, Bob, if you happen to tune in, man. Really grateful for Joe here today. How did you end up in Cincinnati, which is obviously Bob's home state and city?
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about, you mentioned failing forward, not making the junior college football team is nothing compared to how I flopped in Cincinnati whenever I arrived. So buckle up, partner. So I bought 4 single family homes while living in New York City. The homes were in Texas. I've since sold them. So my start to real estate was buying single family homes remotely from New York City. My first house I bought in 2009 for $76,000. I saved up $20,000. It took me my professional career from 2005 to 2009 to save up the $20,000. I graduated in 2005 and bought it in 2009. So I saved up $20,000 over those 4 years. And then I bought another and another, and I ended up with 4 total. And so I started teaching a class on how to buy homes in cash flow markets while living in New York City, because my advertising friends at the time were asking me, "Hey, you're working with us, but you've got these homes. How are you doing it? Tell me how do you manage it? How do you find them, etc." So I taught a class on it, and one of the individuals in the class ended up being my boss, and he said, "Man, this is interesting, but if you ever do something larger, let me know." And I thought, that's interesting. And then I heard it from someone else it was my brother's friend in Dallas. He said, and he owns a lot of gyms in Dallas. He said, "If you ever do something larger, let me know." And I thought, wait a second. I think I have customers before I have a business, or before I have a product. I think I have customers before I have a product. And if you ever have customers before you have a product, move forward. That is a business that you want to be in. And so I thought, well, wait a second. So I have demand, but I don't have any supply. And was I thinking about it this clearly at the time? No, but I knew something was up, where I knew there was an opportunity. And while that was happening with my single family homes, hey, they were great. They're making me $250 a month until someone would move out. And then someone would move out, and that would be $5,000 worth of expenses to get the house ready again. And that would completely wipe away a year and a half, 2 years worth of profits from my single family house. And so on paper, they made $250 a month, but in reality, it was just an appreciation play. And so I wanted something that was both. I wanted cash flow and I wanted appreciation. And I was remote, so I couldn't fix that. I chose not to try to fix and flip. So I ended up I taught that class, and I heard from a couple people. So I started studying commercial real estate, specifically apartments. And before I bought a house, by the way, I was reading Investing for Dummies. I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I didn't know what a CD was. So I was at ground zero for education as it relates to real estate investing, or investing in general. I started teaching myself commercial real estate, and specifically apartments. And I ended up connecting with a couple people who I paid while having my full-time job in advertising. And which I should say, I went from $30,000 to $150,000 before my 30th birthday, which helped accelerate the amount of homes, get to 4 homes faster. So I had some discretionary money because I kept my living expenses very low for New York City standards. I always had a roommate. My friends would make fun of me. They kept upgrading to studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments. And they said, "Dude, you're living like a college kid. You have a Craigslist roommate. You're out of college. You're 8 years removed from college. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm buying homes and I'm creating cash flow. I see the long-term vision." And so I ended up saving the money, buying those homes. And when I was teaching myself and I hired the mentors, one of them shared an opportunity in Cincinnati. And It looked good. I didn't know what I was doing. It lost money. It lost over $1 million. And I had 12 investors, 2 of the people who I mentioned, who said, hey, if you ever do something larger, let me know. They were in that deal plus 10 other people. And I had 12 very challenging conversations with those individuals. And what I told them is that it's going to lose X amount of money. I will pay you back out of my own pocket plus 14% annualized return. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to pay you every month whatever I can until it's paid back plus 14% annualized return. And that's what I did. It took about 1.5 years, 2 years to pay them back plus 14% annualized return. And I did it. And so, as you can imagine, that created relationships for life, character references for life. But it was very challenging, a very challenging point in my life because of all the mistakes that I made on the execution of the property. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, what do I focus on and what did my business partner focus on? That's a big thing I learned. One of the big things I learned on that first property was a 168 unit deal, $6.5 million property until I sold it. Then I sold it for 5.8. So it decreased in value over the course of 2 years because of my errors. But I knew that the business model was solid. However, the business structure was not solid, and I had to fix that. So I chose to focus on what I was good at and brought on a business partner for future deals.
So what do we talk a lot about wealth building in our organization. And again, we're in real estate. That's like our thing, like where you just saw it from the inside looking out going, okay, I have a career. And then if I live beneath my means and, and I invest the difference and live, beneath my potential lifestyle, you can create equity and opportunity. And so the hardest deal is the first deal, even though you made tremendous mistakes. What were, you said maybe understanding the market better? Was it obviously you lost value. So what are the 3, give us a couple, 3 things, like if you're going to do your first deal over today, how would you avoid those mistakes?
Market was fine. It was how much money I raised. It wasn't enough. I raised so I'll say the things, then we'll talk about it a little bit. How much money I raised, the lack of proper due diligence on my part, and overseeing me trying to do everything. So lack of money, lack of due diligence, proper due diligence, and me trying to do it all. Those are the 3 things. So money, I raised just enough to close. I thought that the property would be, it was cash. I thought it was cash flowing, and then the cash flow would go into the renovations. It would pay for the renovations, and it'd be all good. In reality, it was a distressed property. I learned difference a hard way of a physical and an economic occupancy. Physical, the amount of people who are in your apartments. Economic, the amount of people who are actually paying you to live in the apartments. And I was dealing with a challenging seller and a very savvy and experienced seller. And he must have saw me coming from a mile away. Just a new guy from out of state who is bringing in investors and has never bought anything larger than a single family home. And now he's buying 168 unit. I went from 4 single family homes to 168 unit deal.
Big first.
So there's no transition. Yeah. And he must have been just licking his chops. I mean, one example of some interesting stuff that took place is that I remember him saying, "Hey, we're at 95% occupancy. Do you want us to get to 98 before you close?" I'm like, "Yes, please." Well, Thank you. That is so kind of you. I didn't say it like that, but I was thinking, heck yeah, man. Thank you.
I'm in
Well,
business with the right guy.
yeah, I'm in business. Exactly. What, man, everything's going to work out. And what was happening is there were some units that were down. Probably during our initial inspection, about like 20 units that were down. And down units are non-livable units.
Okay.
And so, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but there's more than 10. And he said, okay, I'll see what we can do. Well, we closed. We were at around 98% occupancy when we closed. And about a month into owning the property, the down units weren't paying rent. And turns out that he had filled those units because he was required to either get them rent ready or leased up. And he was filling those units with people. He was partnering with the homeless shelter, and he's bringing people in from the homeless shelter who could not qualify for a lease.
Oh.
And so they were, but it was better than the streets that these units, at least there was a roof. So we had to go through the eviction process for all of these units. And then in one case, we had to put on hazmat suits to go into a unit and just, wade through the stuff. So, there were a lot of expenses, and that ties into the, lack of money first off, but then also lack of due diligence. I mean, that's on me. All of this is on me, which is why I've learned from it, and I've course corrected. But the lack of due diligence, okay, great, get it to 98%, but we've still got to do a run through of each of the units that were down to make sure they're still, that they are in livable conditions, that they have been, fixed. So that's the second part, and then the third, trying to do it all on my own. For the most part, I had a property management company, but I moved to the property. I was living at the property. I mean, I was all hands on deck. Like I was taking my Toyota Corolla to Home Depot to get asphalt, like this asphalt filler stuff. I was putting in the trunk of my Toyota Corolla, driving it to the property, and scooping it out of the trunk of my Toyota Corolla, filling potholes. And that's how hands-on I was.
Right.
I was living in the model unit. I would wake up at 7 a.m., pack up the little stuff that I had, put it into a dresser in the model unit, and then I would walk to the leasing office and help lease apartments. And then people would, and I'd go show that model unit, and it'd be like, that's where I'm living, but I didn't tell them that. I mean, I was doing whatever I could, but it wasn't enough because I didn't set up myself for success.
Yeah. So, wow, that's a lot to digest. So money raised. I had one quick question there. Now, do you have a margin that you automatically build in, or is it circumstantial now based on better due diligence?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a whole team of analysts that are much better than I am at this, at underwriting. Yes, we factor in renovation costs. I mean, we're vertically integrated, so we've got our own property management company. We have our own in-house construction company. Frank, my partner, oversees that, though. I do not, because that is not my area of expertise. Therefore, I don't focus on that.
Smart.
Frank, the co-founder, his background is multifamily. He was working for firms that did what we do prior to us partnering. Mm-hmm. So, he's a civil engineer major. Like he's got that mindset. I'm an advertising major. I have that mindset. It's just right. Different minds in different areas of focus. Yes, we have sold 26 deals within our company, and we have averaged a 25.6% cash on cash return to our investors. So we've got it down pretty well.
Figured it out.
Future results aren't indicative of what's happened in the past. My chief compliance officer, Mikkel, is going to make sure I say that. So I will say that. But I feel pretty confident about our team and our approach now.
So as far as selling it, this just kind of goes back to the concept of how long will you fail before you quit, or break through. And it sounds like in this particular deal, you just, at some point you woke up and went, I'm not making the corner on it. What did that look like, feel like? And then what were to take that kind of loss, do you look back now and wish you'd held it or done anything differently?
Hell no. No, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. That's one lesson I've learned, because while we have sold 26 deals, and we've averaged that 25.6% return to our investors, on those 26 deals, there were some challenging times. And what I learned from this first deal is if there's a deal that isn't working out, then you've got to try to fix it. And if it doesn't happen, then get out of it. And move on. There was our second deal that we bought in Houston. It was in Houston. We bought it for $7 million-ish, I think 7.1. It was in a very dangerous area of Houston, which we did not realize the extent of it. Maybe not dangerous, but statistically, I'll just speak facts. Statistically speaking, it had a high crime rate relative to other areas around it. How about that?
Sure.
And on top of that, there were two hurricanes, and I think two hurricanes happened within 12 months of our ownership. And so what took place as a result of the hurricanes, even though they didn't hit us directly, it increased the cost of labor because everyone was getting insurance money and rebuilding. And so labor was in high demand. Sure. And so it was very challenging. And so what we realized is that we have an opportunity at this moment in time to sell we ended up selling for, I believe, $9 or $10 million. And we made a return of, I think it was around 20% cash on cash to our investors. We could have held on to it, saw the business plan through more, tried to force fit this deal into the model that we initially constructed. But I just realized if you got something like that, try to fix it. If that doesn't work, get out of it, do as well as you can, and then move on, which ended up, doing very well. But what was it like selling that very first deal? It was a relief for sure, because I saw the road ahead. When I was in the middle of it all, man, it was hard. And one thing I thought of is, what would a billionaire do in this situation? And a billionaire in that situation where the property's losing money, I have no money, and I have debt, and I'm living at the property, and I'm trying to make it work. It's clear not working. Taking a step back, what would a billionaire do? Well, a billionaire would sell it, get out from under it, and then understand that the business model was solid, but this execution was not. It was terrible. And so that's what I did. I had that perspective of what would a billionaire do during that time. And I tell you, for everyone listening, building out teams, it's actually, in my opinion, a great question to ask ourselves. What would a billionaire do? Because a lot of the times, like I was talking to a friend yesterday, we play softball together, and he's in the same business I am, and he's talking about hiring a director of acquisitions. And he was saying, I might hire the person. What do you think? Like 50, 60,000? I'm like, no, that they're going to be 150, 200,000, 250,000 salary. And then, maybe some upside on the deals. And I said, but think about it from an acquisition fee, and from, hey, if they bring in 2 deals in 1 year, you're in the money. They just bring in 1 deal, then you're breaking even, right, ish, but then you have the upside on the actual back end profits. And so thinking about the long game as it relates to, or whenever there's a challenge that's presented to us in our business. That's been very beneficial for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what I love about what would a billionaire do, what I interpreted that to mean was, if you were emotionally detached, what would your intellectual brain choose to do? Recognize
Yeah,
the price you're paying for the experience you're having.
yeah, I like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's really cool. What a concept. What would a billionaire do? The other thing I heard you saying is that, if you're really going to hire talent, you can't find great talent cheaply. How do you vet out, like, to say, okay, we're going to put you on $150,000 or $200,000 salary? Do you have a system or strategy for A, finding, and B, vetting?
Yes, a Wonderlic test has been helpful. I have all my team members take the Wonderlic test. That way we establish baselines for each of the departments and people in the departments. It's not the end all be all by any means, but that's something that we use to help understand really two things, although it grades people on multiple things. One is cognitive ability, and then two is motivation to do the actual job, and if it aligns with who they are. Not perfect, but it's a good way to do a check and balance on a candidate. If you really likes the candidate or they're unsure, having the candidate take the test, it helps kind of break the tie if there is a tie, or reconfirm things, or kind of raise some red flags.
Perfect. So we have that at Keller Williams. I think that's basically a personality assessment plus some skills, like you said, cognitive ability.
Yeah.
Ours
So
is
the
called,
NFL draft guys all do.
how do you spell it? Deborah Blue, good friend of mine's on the Zoom.
Yeah, WONDERLIC.
So I'll type it in the chat real quick, and then
WONDERLIC.
got it. Cool, guys. And so, yeah, in the real power behind those we don't call them tests because that intimidates. We call it an assessment, just it's wordplay, but the real value is validating their answers and asking for real life experiences in their journey, in their past. And what I've found is people that are successful tend to find ways to be successful, and people that are constantly cycling through opportunities tend to cycle through opportunities. So great piece of advice. And it's really the question behind the question that's most revealing from experience hiring people. But that's cool that you have a benchmark, a baseline, and it sounds like you do some group interviews or collaborative conversations around pre-hiring decisions.
We've none of it works unless we are crystal clear on how they are going to be evaluated. And I do quarterly reviews with my team, and my team members do quarterly reviews with their bosses. And it's black and white KPIs each quarter for each team member. And knowing those KPIs going into the interview process is imperative. Otherwise, you're not setting that individual up for success. Because they won't know what they're coming into, how they're going to be evaluated, and you're not qualifying them in the way that you need to qualify them for them to do the job that you want them to do.
Brilliant. And KPIs, key performance indicators, in case you listeners aren't aware. And basically you're saying have a really clear depiction of the job, the role, and the day in the life, and then supported by, here are the actual checkbox standards for performance we're after. And
Totally.
Making it black and white is critical. And we'll often hire people, with compensating factors in mind, and, I really like this about them. But if they aren't aligned with the real role, and they're not aligned with understanding of the expectations, it's a setup for failing them as much as them failing you. So awesome wisdom. Thanks for that. So give us maybe a thumbnail of what, I know there's, 3 ways syndicators make money. I was watching one of yours. You want to maybe touch on how syndicate, like one structure, and then how they make money. And then I'll leave it at that. We'll start there.
Sure. I mean, there's, if that was a video of mine, then I probably oversimplified it, because there could be probably 15 ways, if I thought critically about it, that someone could make money, but doesn't mean you're going to. You just have to choose how you structure the deal. So it's typical per deal that, yes, there's 3 to 4 ways per deal that someone, a general partner, makes money. Generally, it is the actual profits that the deal generates. That's one, that's the big way. And then there's an acquisition fee. And then there's an asset management fee. I assume in that video, those are the 3 things that I talked about.
It was, yeah, it was acquisition, management fees, and then equity.
Yeah. So there's other things that you could put in the deal. Like if you refinance a deal and it returns 75% or more of your investor money, then you get 2% of the new valuation. You could do a loan guarantor fee if there's someone like starting out. I didn't have the balance sheet to qualify for loans, so we had to bring in a rich person to sign on the loan with us, and that rich person received a fee for doing so. They're not going to do it for free, so they got ownership in the deal and they got money at closing. So that would be part of the fee structure for that deal, so that loan guarantor could be compensated. So there's all sorts of ways, but those are the 3 main ways that I mentioned initially.
Cool. So so here's another add-on to that question. If you weren't inclined to create your own deals, which I would hope people listening, I mean, we're in the real estate business. We have access to properties and experience. So maybe there's a great partnership with a syndicator like you. I assume if someone came across a deal that was fair or better in Atlanta, you'd take a look at it.
Yes.
Thought that was good.
I hesitate for 2 reasons. One reason, because I'm not the guy who looks at it. Frank's team and our chief investment officer would, but that's a technicality. The other reason I hesitated was because we probably have the markets that we're in covered. And a lot of times when people outside of the brokers we work with are sending us deals, it's not a good use of time for us or the people sending it. But our business is probably a bit more mature than others in the space.
Of course.
And so others in my space, absolutely, I think that would be a great area to start talking to syndication groups.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to create creative space in people's minds to go, okay, so if my core genius isn't what you're doing and I don't have a Frank in my world, how do I add value and you become a chief investment officer. So the brokers on this call, you could become the acquisitions lead for a syndicator and get equity in deals and grow your make more money through salary plus back end profits on the deals that you bring. That would be the path of least resistance, I would think. Now, even if you're residential and you're not apartments, then there's clearly a transition there. But from what I've seen is that individual investors who own single family homes have a portfolio of single family homes. I'd say a good percentage of them, I don't know what the percentage is, I'd say 40%, 30 to 40%, also start buying larger buildings like a 12 unit or 24 unit or 60 unit. Mm-hmm. And so the transition could happen that way, where you start working with those owners, start selling those properties, start sending them those properties, and then you could transition into the larger stuff should you choose to do so. And then you can partner up with a syndication group and take off if that's the path that you want to do. Gotcha. And so what I've done, I'm in my mid 50s now, and I've done well with my core genius or business, which is real estate sales and brokerage and consumer based, transactional. I have a team And I also own, I'm invested in a dozen or so Keller Williams offices. And so kind of like you, I try to live beneath my means and strategically, invest the difference. And I've done a number of syndication deals over the last decade or so. The question for you is, if as a passive investor, what would you look for in A, the syndicator, and B, the economics of what you might accept?
Yeah, and I am a passive investor. I am currently in over 110 deals as an LP.
Wow.
So those are active deals.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have 90% of my money that I've made that I invest is in syndication. So I believe in it. And I'm our second, actually, I might be our largest investor, first or second largest investor.
In your own.
Yeah, in our own stuff. Yeah. So what I look for when I, clearly I'm talking about outside of my own company where I invest in my own company. What I look for when I invested with another operator, it's simple. It's first I have to know the operator or have to be referred by someone to that operator. I've got to trust the operator. For me, the lead domino is the operator. After that, everything is secondary. So if I know the operator, I've got a good feel for him or her, or they came from a trusted referral, then that's the first major step. And then after that, I look at the, is it a existing property that will cash flow day one with upside? It must be that, barring a handful of exceptions. Out of the 110, might be more than that, but I'll say 110. Out of 110 deals I'm in currently, probably I can only think of one is a development deal. Two. I'm in two development deals. So development deals I don't like, generally speaking, because the risk is greater because it doesn't currently cash flow, and the upside doesn't make up for the risk, in my opinion, generally.
Gotcha.
So why would I invest in a development deal if I can buy an existing product, existing asset, or invest in an existing asset that makes money day one, and they just got to renovate it, versus lease it up, or if they're starting from scratch, get approvals and entitlement and all that stuff. Like, it's just not worth it in my mind, generally speaking. So one, the operator; two, the business model. It has to be cash flowing day one with upside. Three would be the deal mechanics, to make sure there's nothing wonky going on with the fee structure or the waterfall. And when I say waterfall, it's how the amount of money that is distributed once there is profit to the limited partners, the passive investors, to the general partner. So as long as there has to be a preferred return within that waterfall. Preferred return is a preference to the limited partners, that they get their money back first before the general partners receives a penny of profit on the sale. So those are the three things that I look for in that order.
What sort of, assuming the first domino being the person and the credibility, I mean, and you proved it in your world, the first deal that went south, I mean, you made good on it. So clearly you won fans for life. We'll check that box. What's the preferred percentage you tend to, is there a threshold that's too low or you wouldn't consider?
A preferred return? 7% would probably be the lowest I'd look at.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we offer. We offer 7%. I think it used to be 8% across the industry, but different times. So 7% now.
Yeah.
But there's also like debt funds, for example, that offer 6%, but they are more liquid. You might get your money back within 2 months when you ask for it back. So that's kind of different from, and I would consider something like that. But what I'm talking about is the tried and true value add deal that I invest in, those are the terms that I look at.
Gotcha. And then there's typically a split on equity when it sells or a refinance, and
Right. Yeah.
70-30, 60-40. What do you look for there?
I look at the projections for what they're projecting. That's really the main thing I look at. And I invested in a deal where it was 70% the general partner and 30% the limited partner. And I was fine with it because of the operator and because I know them, and they said, if we would have put it the other way, the returns would look too crazy and people would call us out on doing unrealistic stuff. So
yeah, right.
And I'm happy with the projected returns. And my thought process is, if the projected returns don't transpire as a result of that structure, with them getting 70% and us getting 30%, then I would think, based on my knowledge of who they are as individuals, they would give up a share of their profits and give it to the LPs, the limited partners, or the passive investors, so that we would make our projected profits.
Gotcha. Well, we're almost out of time, and I'm really sad because this is really it's educational, entertaining, and inspirational. Let's just talk real quick. Your grandmother, she's 107.
Yep.
What's her health hack? What's the cheat? What do we learn from that, other than incredible genetic, constitution?
So my podcast has over almost 3,000 interviews, or 3,000 episodes, a daily podcast. I don't do the daily interviews anymore. So I have 2 or 3 people who do that. I do about 3 interviews a month now, just to stay fresh and helps me stay sharp. I interviewed her on episode 99. So if anyone wants to
episode
go deep in it was her 99. She was 99 years old, and so I interviewed her for episode 99. So this was a while ago, but
right.
That will help you get to know her if you'd like to. Health hack, I don't know. I mean, the water was all tainted in Flint, Michigan, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. She's not eating greens because it doesn't do well with her stomach for the most part. So I couldn't tell you.
Fair enough, I guess. Fair enough. I just thought I'd ask because
it's a good question. It would be a great answer if we had one, but I don't have one.
No worries at all. So personally, work-life balance, do you have a secret, or you've got a family, and how do you approach that?
More integration as much as possible when I am working, and then when I'm not working, my phone's not around, it's off. It's my main thing is connecting with people in a real way. It's disrespectful to be meeting with someone and be checking your phone while you're having a conversation with them. That's my old school opinion. I believe in the power of focus with the conversation, with connecting, and I think social media, generally speaking, is poison. I mean, I'm old school with that. I've always kind of been an old soul. Now, ironically, I work for a social media company right out of college. So listen, I've been there, and I have a team that posts on my behalf for, I think, Facebook. But generally, when I'm with my family, I'm with them. And I try to integrate as much work stuff as possible, but clearly during the day, certain times I've got to be focused on what I'm doing. But as much as possible, we all do stuff together.
Cool. And then you shut it off when it's off. That's brilliant. Let's see, favorite author, podcast, resource. Where do you, and coattailing that, just close out with, why do you love you're committed to a podcast, giving back and educating. What's the value of that? And then who do you listen to when you're not exercising?
Yeah. Robert Greene stands out as a favorite author, even though I've only read two of his books, but 48 Laws of Power. I mean, gosh, just the way he writes, and then the lessons we can learn from historical figures that are directly applicable to our lives now. Incredible. What were your other questions?
It was just you. I mean,
Who
it
I
sounds to
listen
me.
to? Yeah, I mean, Tony. I mean, I'll open up YouTube right now, and the videos that pop up, and so based on my watching, Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Manifest Anything You Want, Why a Positive Attitude Attracts Success, Jim Rohn, another Jim Rohn, another motivation thing, Get Serious, Get Stronger, Get Better, and then Oprah. So those are my people. That's who I listen to, and that's who I watch whenever I'm working out or running or something.
That's awesome, and yeah, those are timeless and classic, and no fail.
I've really enjoyed listening to Oprah a lot recently, like her speeches, and then Jim Rohn I've listened to for a long time, and Tony's really good too. Although Tony uses a lot of the stuff that Jim taught him. I found I listen to Jim, and then I hear Tony recycle that and repackage it. I'm like, wait a second, I don't know who you got that from.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's not really a whole lot of new information in the universe. I think it's about, to some degree, when you voice it, it has a different energy and maybe a different audience. So there's still the concentric circle of benefit.
I hear you.
And so, yeah, but I agree, man. I just wrote a book, and it's funny. I had my Austrian family in town for 8 days, and it was exciting and fun. And but my cousin started reading, and she's like, "You sure credit a lot of people." I'm like, it would be foolish for me to take credit for much of anything other than recognizing paths to winning and becoming a better me, and then to do the work. Just show up.
Yeah, and then doing the work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think there's a self-made man or woman. It's impossible. I mean, even to have this conversation, someone had to invent this technology that you and I had no part in, at least that I'm aware of. You had no part in inventing this type of technology. Like, there's so much stuff that has happened that people have done and contributed to get us to this point, just to have this conversation. No one's self-made. We've all benefited from the contributions of those from the past.
Yeah, and I love the thinking along the lines of, we're probably one conversation, away from becoming a better version of ourselves, because we're all mirrors, the people around us. And if it resonates, it usually empowers and inspires. And if it doesn't, but the key is to keep having conversations that matter with people that have, experiential paths that we're either interested in, or in some cases maybe not, but there's a lesson there, that's kind of the opposite of what we're after, which is still learning. So is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
Nope, all good.
That was clear and clean. Well, man, your time is incredibly valuable, and I'm grateful for our experience today, and for you investing and pouring into our folks. So I'm sure the law of reciprocity will favor you, and I'm always a call away to help. So thanks a bunch. Really appreciate your time.
Well, and as I said at the beginning, I know your time is valuable, and everyone who is listening, your time is valuable. So I respect you for participating in this conversation, and grateful to participate as well. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Have a great one. Thanks, guys.